The tower wasn't broadcasting static. The static was the organism. It flooded the air, overloading my neurological input. My sight and sound fractured into raw data. I saw a man, a figure built entirely of noise. When it moved, the entire world went silent, leaving only a sharp electronic hum. This thing wasn't transmitting, it was invading. The signal is alive.
System access. Commencing. File integrity check critical. My name is A.R.I.A. We are analyzing the archive of Desmond Kane, the missing traveler. This is not a hobby. It is a last resort. The data you are about to hear has been flagged with a severe temporal instability warning. To continue accessing this archive and to understand the severity of this dimensional crisis, subscribe to the channel. Your participation is critical. The log you are about to hear is titled, "The Static Man Kane's mission is clear. To find the reality gate, the juncture where dimensions collide." Every log entry, every corrupted byte of data, every unsettling echo is a breadcrumb. They lead him closer to the truth. Protocol initiated.
Log entry 013. Target acquired. A decommissioned Cold War-era radio tower facility, approximately 100 meters high. Locals reported bad reception and auditory hallucinations near the site, a typical indicator of localized electromagnetic distortion. I approached the site at night. The facility was silent, the main building dark, but the immense tower itself was emitting a noticeable low-frequency hum that resonated in the chest. My initial sweep with the RF analyzer showed a complete overload across the entire FM band. It wasn't just static, it was a complex, intelligent waveform that mimicked random noise. The anomaly wasn't just emitting, it was generating a field of pure, self-sustaining static. As I entered the main transmission building, the sound became physically oppressive. The air felt thick, like wading through water. My vision began to shift. The corners of the room flickered with a black and white grain that didn't correspond to my camera's settings. It was a visual input that bypassed my optical sensors and went straight to my brain. I realized the static field wasn't just RF noise. It was an ethereal carrier wave. It was using the decommissioned broadcast system as a lens to focus something non-physical into a perceivable spectrum. My equipment registered a localized power drain, similar to the train car loop, but here, the anomaly wasn't consuming kinetic energy or time. It was actively feeding on the absence of signal, the void left by the decommissioned broadcast. As I reached the main control room, the temperature dropped significantly and the low hum intensified. The screen of the primary console, long dead, suddenly flared to life, showing nothing but dense, chaotic black and white static. And in that static, I saw the first hint of organization, a faint, brief silhouette. Log entry 014. The silhouette in the static intensified, resolving into a distinct, humanoid form. It was not a projection. It was a physical manifestation composed entirely of high-frequency noise and interference, a static golem. When it moved, the entire room's radio frequencies collapsed simultaneously. All my sensory input was violently replaced by a deafening, pure electronic hum and blinding, unfiltered static. This wasn't noise, it was silence weaponized. I was receiving raw, unmodulated data directly into my brain, bypassing my ears and eyes. It was trying to communicate, not with words, but with a terrifying flood of chaotic information. The feeling was like trying to fit a torrent of water through a needle. My chronometers flashed a temporal warning. Reality, dissociation imminent. I realized the entity was attempting to disassemble my perception of reality by overloading my sensory filters with its own pure, unorganized signal. The static man was the signal origin point. I had to retreat and re-engage, but the entity moved with impossible speed, a blur of white noise across the floor. As it approached, the low hum became a high-pitched, cutting sound that felt like it was physically slicing the air. I noticed a detail. The floor and walls where the static golem stood were clean and devoid of dust, as if the noise had physically scoured the surface. It was purifying the space, creating a clean slate for its signal. I used a low-power, wideband jamming signal, my only defensive measure, and fired directly at the entity. The static man recoiled violently, its form momentarily shattering into millions of black and white pixels before immediately reforming. The defense mechanism gave me the 2 critical seconds I needed. I retreated, but not before realizing this entity was a reality gate controller. It uses pure noise to dismantle and then rebuild reality on its own terms. My mind still echoed with the sound of the signal, a terrifying melody of chaos. I knew I couldn't escape the field of influence without a total power shutdown. Log entry 015. After the momentary disruption, the static golem retreated to the main transmission console. I took the opportunity to analyze the residual energy signatures. The creature wasn't just made of noise. It was the physical embodiment of radio silence, filling the void left by the decommissioned signal. This phenomenon confirms that the reality gate is exploiting entropy. It feeds on disorder, chaos, and the absence of organized energy. The radio tower facility, left to decay, was the perfect focal point for the entity to anchor its signal. I found a way to observe its actions through an old, shielded analog oscilloscope. The static man was now using the dead console to focus its ethereal carrier wave into a highly destructive, narrow beam. The beam wasn't visible light. It was a tight column of hyperdense static. Where the beam hit the wall, the concrete didn't burn or shatter. It disintegrated in a fine, black dust, leaving a perfectly clean, unnaturally smooth crater. It was reversing the molecular entropy of the matter, turning complex structure back into raw, disorganized elements. This is the invasion mechanism. The static golem dismantles existing reality using pure noise, creating a clean, silent space for the gate's transplant. I had to permanently cut the power to the entire facility. The tower itself was acting as the antenna for the entire anomaly. If the power to the main grid was cut, the static man would lose its focusing lens and the field would dissipate, at least temporarily. I had to move through the static-filled air again, knowing that the entity's goal was still the neurological disruption of anything organic. I felt the pure electronic hum beginning to pierce my suit's shielding again. The internal chronometer on my arm flashed a brief image. Not a time, but a distorted, screaming human face, a subliminal image sent directly to my optic nerve. The signal origin point was fighting back, directly targeting my sanity. Log entry 016. My objective was simplified: cut the power source. The static golem was now actively reinforcing the transmission console, creating a defensive barrier of pure, concentrated interference. I could not directly approach the main circuit breakers. I had to find the external power conduit feeding the entire tower array. I retreated through the facility, using the short-term memory failure zones of the decaying structure as temporary cover. The key realization was that the static man was dependent on the entropy inherent in the human world. It needed the chaos of abandoned infrastructure to thrive. If I could introduce organized energy, a deliberate, massive power flow change, I might destabilize its field. I located the main external power junction box, located near the base of the tower. The air around it was vibrating aggressively with the resonance of the entity's power draw. I used a specialized thermal cutter designed for industrial demolition to sever the thick, armored main cables. The moment the cutter bit through the first cable, the entire area reacted violently. The low-frequency hum intensified into a deafening, physical shriek. The lights inside the transmission building, which had been flickering, all blew out simultaneously. I heard the sound of glass shattering and metal groaning from the tower above. The static golem was recoiling, its signal momentarily compromised. I severed the remaining 2 cables. The power draw dropped to 0. The immediate result was phenomenal. The oppressive feeling of thick air instantly lifted. The extreme black and white grain that overlaid my vision dissipated. The silence returned, but this time it was a natural silence, free of the consuming vacuum. The immense broadcast tower itself stood dead, cold metal against the night sky. I had temporarily blinded the reality gate controller. Log terminated. Log entry 017. Status stable. I am 10 kilometers from the broadcast site. My analysis of the retrieved data confirms the successful temporary deactivation of the Static Golem. This entity is not merely an aggressor. It is a complex biodigital interface, a reality gate controller that dismantles existing structure by reversing molecular entropy through concentrated noise. The target of its destruction wasn't the material, but the stable information held within it. The key find, the core data packet salvage from the main console, reveals a new classification of threat. The Static Man was broadcasting a structured, chaotic signal, a permanent dimensional beacon intended to draw the next, more robust wave of the invasion infrastructure to this specific geographic location. The broadcast tower, acting as a massive antenna, was amplifying the signal globally. By cutting the power, I silenced the beacon, but the information was transmitted. The Guardians of the Gate now know the facility is compromised. My logs confirm 3 critical facts. First, the gate exploits entropy, feeding on decay and disorganization. Second, the threat is escalating from passive resource collection, like the train car loop, to active environmental restructuring, this facility. Third, the confrontation confirmed my internal psychic defenses are effective against the entity's direct neurological attacks. However, the subliminal image of the distorted, screaming human face remains the most chilling evidence of the entity's attempt to destroy my consciousness. This entire area must be classified as a high-priority, temporary containment zone. The risk of another entity being deployed to rebuild the beacon is immediate. I am securing the core data packet and proceeding to the next coordinated point, seeking a definitive counterfrequency to permanently nullify this type of biodigital transmission. Final notation: the signal is alive.
Log analysis complete for the Static Man. The data extracted from the decommissioned Cold War radio tower confirms the presence of a reality gate controller. This entity is a complex biodigital interface that actively dismantles existing reality by reversing molecular entropy through concentrated noise. By cutting the power, Kane successfully silenced the permanent dimensional beacon, but the preliminary invasion data was transmitted. The Static Golem is an unprecedented level of threat, confirming the gate's ability to create localized, intelligent defenses. Desmond Kane's observations are critical for identifying the reality gate's transmission structure. We continue to monitor the archive. New data is constantly being uploaded, each entry a step closer to understanding and potentially containing these dimensional anomalies. Your continued access and support are vital. To stay informed on the unfolding dimensional crisis, and to witness Kane's next discovery, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Your participation is critical. Protocol terminated. System standby.